Hi, welcome back to part two of the Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Were. We have two special guests on the telephone, two great historians, and one is a dear friend, Dr. Al Tony Gilmore, one of the great historians, and when it comes to boxing or sports period, and when it comes to the social side of it, he is no one can beat him. Dr. Gilmore is also the author of Bad Nigger, one of the greatest champions of all time, and I'm talking about Jack Johnson. Also joining us is our special guest, Randy Roberts of Purdue University. He has a red hot book titled Blood Brothers, The Fatal Friendship Between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. We're going to start with part two by bringing these two great historians back on the air. Okay, guys, welcome back.
Thank you, Harold.
All right, Randy.
Thank you, Harold.
All right, Randy. One of the things too that I was very interested in, the 1963 March on Washington was big and historical. I happened to be there for that because I remember being a senior at Winston-Salem State when a lot of my teammates came down from New York and New Jersey, and we all met at Ben's Chili Bowl and walked down for the march. But I also know during that time that the Nation of Islam was barred, the members were barred from being anywhere near that march. But Malcolm X, for some reason, unknown to me or anybody else, he was granted permission to be in the city at that time because there was a warning that went out to all members with the Nation of Islam. If you find anywhere near that march, the consequences for you being there, man, is going to be off the charts. And a lot of folks from the nation did not show up for that. Tell us about that, Randy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Publicly, of course, Malcolm called it not the March on Washington, but the farce on Washington. And he wasn't. You're right. Elijah Muhammad sent out the order as no participation at all by the Nation of Islam. But Malcolm got kind of a special dispensation, not to march, but to be there, to observe what was going on. The one thing that Malcolm was starting to bristle under is the Nation of Islam talked about what they were going to do, and they talked about, kind of by any means necessary, and if you lay your hand on me, you better watch out. Or as Malcolm one time said, you kill my dog, you better watch out for your cat. But there was very little action, and particularly when one of their own, a guy by the name of Stokes, who was killed by the police in something that sounds all too familiar, unfortunately, still was killed by police in Los Angeles. Malcolm wanted to do something. But Elijah said, no, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to do anything. And so one of the things Malcolm was starting to bother him is that the nation didn't seem to be doing anything. There was no teeth in the rhetoric. The rhetoric was there, but it seemed to be falling on deaf ears. So he was already maybe starting to think about some kind of coalition that problems down in Birmingham. Look at what was taking place in '63 in Birmingham, but yet the nation did nothing. They weren't part of that. School children getting hosed and police dogs being sicked on people, and the nation staying away from it. Malcolm kept thinking the nation's got to be where the action is. Okay, we've got to be doing something. We have got to be showing that we're opposing this, and not just through words.
Mm-hmm. Tony?
I agree with Randy that the restrictions of the nation were not consistent with the growing aggressive militant mood of African Americans. And Malcolm seized upon those times. He understood that the nation was changing as a result of the Civil Rights Movement, the sit-ins, the Freedom Riders, the various assassinations, the March on Washington. He understood that this was transforming the nation and the thinking of African Americans more so than Elijah Muhammad did, or even if Elijah Muhammad did, he never saw whether that was in the best interest of what was going extraordinarily well for him, and that is the cultivating of a religious cult/movement that had been under the radar screen and was doing quite well by every standard. Now, when I say doing quite well by every standard, Elijah Muhammad was completely exempt from what we would call scrutiny. The outside world was not interested in him, and the Muslims, they have criticized this messenger. And I think that this deity of Elijah Muhammad starts to go under another level of scrutiny once this friction develops between a sharp-witted and a sharp-minded Malcolm and an Elijah Muhammad who is creating some problems with Malcolm's thinking and sense of morality and ethics, particularly around all of these children that he is spawning from young girls who are members of the faith that he has cultivated. And this is very, very dangerous. It is not good for Elijah Muhammad and his followers to learn about this. It is not good to become public, and it certainly is not good for future recruitment. And I think that Malcolm posed a threat of whatever it was about Malcolm. He outsized all expectations of what he should have done with that mosque number 7 in Harlem. He got to the point that there is no way that Elijah Muhammad did not see him as a force, as competition, and as a threat to his autonomy of leadership. So I think there was a lot brewing beneath. But to go back to Randy, and I'll ask you as well, Harold, because I recall when he came from when Muhammad Ali returned from Zaire, Harold,
mm-hmm.
you were probably one of the few broadcast journalists that was in his inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how much did he say to you about his relationship with Malcolm, which was past at that point in time. Malcolm had been assassinated. And did he say anything to you about his relationship with the Nation of Islam?
Right. Well, well, during that time, at that particular time, as I had mentioned earlier, Malcolm had kind of got by me, and when he came back from Zaire, Muhammad Ali was really basically on his own, because he had promised me in Chicago I was supposed to go to Zaire with him, but I was scared to fly across all that water. I said, man, I'll wait till you get back. And he, started giving me the chicken side, chick. But he was one scared to fly also. But I was really scared of flying all across that water. But he made a promise to me. He said, well, when I come back, you will be the first journalist that will interview me. I didn't pay no attention to him, And of course, that big fight, it was historical. And he had every confidence that he was going to win it, and I was skeptical because George Foreman was knocking out everyone, everyone he faced. And of course, when he knocked him out in the 8th round, man, all hell broke loose in the sporting world. That's one of the biggest upsets of all time. And on his return to New York, I'm lying home in the bed in Southeast D.C. In my apartment when I get a call about 10 o'clock at night saying, hey, man, I'm back. This is the greatest. I'm back. I said, what? He said, yeah, I'm back, man. He said, do you want the interview? I said, of course. He said, well, I'm here in New York. Bring your camera crew up. And I didn't even have a camera crew at the time. I had no money, no car, no anything. So anything. Now I said, man, I got on the phone and called a couple of buddies of mine that work for PBS. And they had access to cameras. They snuck the cameras out of the station. My brother Will had a credit card, and Rodney Brown had a car. And we went up to New York, man, and it was really, man, he was exactly where he said he was going to be. Stayed right off the park. I can't think of the name of the hotel. But when I called up to his room, he said, come on up, man. And that interview that I did with Muhammad Ali in 1974 is one of a kind, because it was one of a kind. You can always tell that if somebody tries to steal it, that he never does an interview with a black eye or a mark on his face. He did this interview with me with a black eye. And the subject matter that we talked about, man, we talked about the game called life, you know, and that was the most important part, man. That you see how much he loved his people, how much he loved children. You know, when you were ever around in Muhammad Ali's presence, man, if a little kid was there, a pretty woman could forget it. The kid had his attention, man. And that's one thing I think drew us to each other. My work in the community when we first met in 1967. And I really never got a chance to, except for that one time, to ask him about Malcolm. We were in the hotel room in the Sheraton Park, and Veronica, kind of cut in. We had to go down and take her to get something to eat. But I really never. That's why Randy's book was so enlightening to me, and what I learned so much from this book about his friendship and relationship with one of the greatest civil rights activists of all time. A man that really cared about his people and left here too soon.
Well, Harold, again, back to Randy, and I want to salute him again before we close the show at any point in time for this topic that he's chosen to write about. When Randy first came on at the beginning of the broadcast, I thought he was very modest in the way he was framing Muhammad Ali as a worldwide personality and a force in American personality, a force in American sense of itself, a force in the world for social movement. Now, Muhammad Ali is perhaps the largest athlete the world has ever produced. He's larger in writings and historiography than Jesse Owens, Babe Ruth, Jack Johnson, Jack Dempsey, Marciana, and Joe Louis combined. When you think of writings on Muhammad Ali, you can only compare him with perhaps Abraham Lincoln, the Civil War, and Jesus Christ. He's really that big as a personality. And Randy, when I was ordering the book, a friend of mine asked me, he said, "Why are you ordering that book, all the books you have on Muhammad Ali?" And I said, well, this is a topic that no one has ever explored about Ali.
That's right.
So I just want to salute. I haven't read it. I just can't. It's sitting in my desk now. It just arrived. But, Randy, what was it about Muhammad Ali and Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam that piqued your interest as this might be something that would add to the literature? And what do you want us to take away after reading your book as the message that you feel we should most embrace?
Well, it's great. And, what you said is true. That somebody estimated there's been more written about Muhammad Ali than any figure since Jesus Christ. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's not true, given all the thousands and thousands of worlds. What I was interested in, I started and I was thinking, well, I'm going to write a biography of Muhammad Ali. But then what I became interested in is how did Cassius Clay become Muhammad Ali? Because they're really two separate people. Okay, how did that happen? How did this kid from a segregated west end of Louisville become, the king? He said, "I'm the king of the world." Well, he was the king of the world. There's never been another world figure, an athlete like him. How did this happen? And as I started to investigate that story, I realized, well, how it happened was Malcolm X. And the role that Malcolm X played in this transition, this flowering of this butterfly, of a float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, of Muhammad Ali. And so that's what I really became interested in telling that story. And, I go back to imagine what it must have been like growing up where he did in Louisville, being told, that whites are first-class citizens and black are second-class citizens, and whites have done all these great things and blacks have done nothing. Then suddenly you're in the Olympics. You're over in Rome. In the world, suddenly, who are the greatest athletes in Rome? It's like Rayford Johnson in the decathlete, Cassius Clay in boxing, Wilma Rudolph in the sprints, Bibi Bikila in the marathon. Suddenly, he's looking around and he's saying, wait a second, I've been told whites are the best. If it wasn't for black Americans, our Olympic team would be losing. We wouldn't win anything. And for him, it must have seemed like the world was topsy-turvy. And he almost takes this sense of a brave new world and with him. And it helps to and Malcolm X gives it a theology. He gives it an ideology for this transition. And that's the story I tried to tell.
Mm.
Oh boy, you took on a very important and a very controversial topic, Randy. I'm wondering how the Nation of Islam responds to your book. Have you had any feedback from the nation?
No, I haven't. I would hope either they would see this as part of their history. It was a vibrant movement. I think that you and Harold were right that one of the problems with the nation at this time is that to grow, and Malcolm X was important in growing the movement, ironically leads to more notice of the movement. As the movement grows, it comes under more scrutiny. And the scrutiny was something that was a problem. But the nation also, one of the things, the leader that Muhammad Ali will follow will be Wallace Muhammad, the son of Elijah Muhammad, who will move, much like Malcolm X, will move towards a more orthodox Islamic faith and towards a more open movement, embracing other civil rights movements. I think Malcolm was comfortable in the nation, but he felt the nation couldn't be so insulated. It's not like he wanted integration. He wasn't ready to follow Martin Luther King, but maybe he was willing to work with Martin Luther King in black-led organizations where they could agree on common goals.
Yeah, he was definitely headed in that direction. One of the most compelling parts of your book, man, was when Malcolm X was fearing for his life, and the nation, he didn't know where the nation might turn up. They had even said, they didn't care if his family was in the way of killing him, but they were going to take him out. And it was, man, really, it was like I was sweating, well, this orthodox man relationship, how it had turned fatal. This man he didn't know where to turn. He didn't know where it was coming from. His family was in jeopardy. And all the time, Muhammad Ali, had really turned his back on him, man. Really turned his back on him. He would travel out of the country. He was safe. Only place he was safe was outside of the country. When he came back to New York and Chicago, man, his life was definitely in danger, man. So, and Muhammad Ali's life ended up being in danger when they took Malcolm X out. I was surprised how well Muhammad Ali held up under that, because they were talking about taking him out in the ring.
Randy, did the transformed Cassius Clay, who became Muhammad Ali, did he get in too deep, and then the fear of the Nation of Islam, the fruit of Islam in particular, did that factor into any decision-making on the part of Ali? Because he certainly came out to criticize Malcolm very strongly.
Sure did.
Yes, there's no question. At least he later told reporters, I don't want to end up like Malcolm. Malcolm knew when he came back from Paris in '65 in January, he knew, and he told reporters, look, I'm a dead man. I'm a dead man walking. It's going to be over. And nation in the Muhammad Speaks, they're saying, anybody who betrays the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is worthy of death. And Muhammad Ali says the same thing, that anybody who betrays Elijah is worthy of death. He comes back, the night he comes back from Paris, his house is firebombed with his daughters and his wife in it. And then just weeks later, or less than a week later or so, he's going to be assassinated in the Audubon Ballroom up in Harlem. So, he knew what the future held for him. He knew that he had been part of the fruit of Islam. He knew what kind of retribution the nation was capable of. And they were extraordinary times, and these were extraordinary people.
Hmm. Tony?
No, I'm digesting what Randy is saying because it comports with my thinking over the years on Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam. When you have a Fruit of Islam, who in many ways is an equivalent of ISIS today, even though ISIS has an international flavor to it, it does not have a quote-unquote specific individual as a target. It has a nation and people as targets who oppose their philosophy. The Fruit of Islam has the same religious mentality that it is a religious duty to take out those who oppose the orthodox teachings of Elijah Muhammad, those who would criticize him publicly. There could be no defense and no support and no protection provided, Malcolm, by any security forces, from police departments to the FBI to anyone else in this country. Couldn't count on that. So,
and they weren't good. You can say that. You can't count on it. And Tony, I think it's important for us to remember is that the Nation of Islam was a product of American racism, was a product of American hatred. It was a product of a legacy of slavery and discrimination that stretched back several hundred years. So, I mean, we shouldn't forget that they are a product of America's peculiar society.
Right.
Yes. I read Carl Evans' book, The Rise and Fall of Elijah Muhammad, and it confirmed all that you just said and all that I believed even before I read it. Randy, you so eloquently summarized my feelings on that.
You know,
Thanks.
as we get ready to prepare to go out here, I kind of sit back at times, Tony, as you well know, and I kind of look at my career in sports journalism as a talk show host, and I realize how fortunate I am to have been a friend of Muhammad Ali's. I stop and think, I've been friends with two of the most, what did you say, two of the most, hated personalities in this country. And that's Richard Nixon and Muhammad Ali. And I said, I've been friends with both, man, but Muhammad Ali always stands out because of the personal attention that he gave me during my career, man. Without Muhammad Ali and Red Auerbach, I always said every black face you see is not your brother and every white face is not your enemy. And I understand that. And Muhammad Ali, I looked at the way he protected Angelo Dundee, man. You know, there was a lot of flack going on in that camp when it came to Angelo Dundee. Angelo handled it well, but Muhammad made sure that everyone knew that this man was not to be touched, was not to be messed with, man. And that's what I liked about him, man, is that he looked out for his people. He would give you anything. You didn't have to take anything from him like a Don King, but he would give you anything. That's the kind of heart that he had. And it makes
Harold,
me so proud to think, go ahead then, Randy.
Harold, there's a story I liked, and one of the people I talked to told me about it, and Muhammad, after he retired, and or when he was kind of at the top of his game, he was invited to a dinner. It's some ballroom in New York, someplace with a lot of high rollers, and he goes into the place, and if you've ever been with Muhammad, I mean, he's a stir. The lights go off when he comes in.
That's right.
And he goes into the place, and somebody comes up to him and says, Muhammad, come on this way. There's some important people that want to meet you. And he turned around, and he went into the kitchen with the kitchen help.
Mm-hmm.
And, he walks in, he starts shaking hands, and he looked at his host, and he said, there's important people in here, too.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of guy he was.
Right.
The least of us were important to him. He wasn't impressed that somebody had millions of dollars or they held this political power. Mm-hmm. He got his strength, I think, from average people, from children, from from brothers and sisters, from walking down in Harlem or in the blackest sections of Washington D.C.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he was most at home, I think.
Right. Well,
I would agree, Randy.
Well, once again, man, this has been a fabulous hour that we have taken here, and I want to thank both of you guys, man. This is one of those special shows, man, where you really get an education, and that's the the key to this whole thing. How many people are learning from what we write, from what we say? And that's the bottom line, man. We got to teach as we go, and we're not doing that today. Our young people have no idea about our great history. And one of those great parts of our history, I think Muhammad Ali followed closely, is with Jack Johnson. He had so much in common with Jack Johnson. All people got to do is look at Jack Johnson's life, which both of you guys are well aware of. Muhammad Ali took a whole lot from Jack Johnson and Sugar Ray Robinson, and to be his own man, I think he learned from a whole lot of other people, both black and white.
Well, Harold, how about this? Let's get together again, bring on with me and Al, Tony, and you, and let's talk about Jack Johnson, Joe Louis, and Muhammad Ali and decide which one's more important to American history. All
right. Tony, you got the last word.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, that would definitely be a good one. Well, I want to thank both of you guys for, of course, participating here on the Legends of Inside Sports and the way we were, and looking forward to having you back real soon. So take care and have a great, great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Continue to do well, my good friend.
Okay, thank you very much. Tony, let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. Be good, friend.
Okay. Over and out.